How does that
No,
look?
I'm not saying that. You get some sense that there's a handful of stocks.
Look at that. I mean, you could tie that to the market. Bang.
Happy New Year, my man. And it's clear, you resolved not to show up to commercial break in a white T-shirt. Good to see you, man.
Yeah. No, it's fair. I actually got my hair cut. I'm feeling strong, feeling good. My
Looking good.
resolution is to keep it high and tight this year.
Look, what's the frequency of cuts for you? I feel like you're going, you're taking it down. Let me guess, probably every 3.5 weeks.
I think
That's
that's
tight.
fair. That's fair. I'd like to do it I'd like to be like stringent with every 3 weeks. I get a little poofy on the sides. I start getting that Bozo the Clown look, which is not good at any age.
I was never going to say that. I tell you, I think it's clownish to come up with a New Year's resolution. Honestly, I think they're garbage. I think if you have to make a resolution, you ain't doing it. This whole thing about I'm gonna lose a couple lbs this year, or I'm gonna spend more time with friends and family. Look, I know that sounds a little obnoxious, but I don't. You live your life, bro. YOLO in 22 for you. YOLO.
What is that from?
Come on.
I thought, is that the thing? Is that like the peanut butter inside the chocolate with the cream? Aren't those
Yeah,
YOLOs?
it's exactly what it was. Yeah, yodels.
Yodels. Can I say? Hold on one second. What's the difference between, other than size and shape? What's the difference between a ring ding and a yodel?
You just said it. It's size and shape. I mean, the ring ding is a hockey puck, and as opposed to the yodel, which is more of like a
Sort of wrapped cylindrical, but
no, but
effectively it's the same. It's the same thing. It's the same dessert
well,
or
what? Hold
breakfast
on,
food.
yodel and funny bone, or yodel and ding dong, ding dong. Ding dong and ring ding, I think, are the same thing, and someone's got some
Yes.
trademark issues there. I don't know who it
No, but
was.
I think a funny bone has peanut butter in it, so there is a difference in terms
I
of
can't stand. Like, as far as I'm concerned, first of all, like I'm wearing a vest, right? And so you like my vest, by the way. I got this from our friends at the Nasdaq. It's a
Well,
sweater vest.
what's interesting is, you'll bring out the vest on CNBC's Fast Money from time to time,
Yes, I
and the
will.
Twitterverse is wonderful. They actually created an account called Tim's Vest, which is a must follow on the Twitter.
Well, I don't think I've ever really worn a vest outside of TV, nor would I. I mean, it's one of these things. It's kind of like a sweater, by the way. I mean, did you get any sweaters for Christmas? Did you get a sweater for
No,
Christmas? Because right,
no.
but nobody gives sweaters for Christmas anymore. In fact, remember that rag wool sweater that's kind of like this? This is actually a Patagonia something. But it was the ubiquitous LL Bean sweater. And honestly, like, I showed up at college and guys like you were all wearing that sweater. I could look around a classroom and there were 6 guys in that same sweater. That to me was embarrassing. I will say that I'm going to say one thing that I kind of have thought about in 22, because some of my buddies, especially my college buddies, you haven't said this to me, but I've had other college buddies that said to me, you've kind of gone soft. Like, what happened to you? Like, we were actually somewhat scared of you in college. And that makes me a little sad. I mean, I feel like maybe I've lost my edge. Have I lost my
Well,
edge, Guy?
no, it's interesting. Hockey players, I think, sometimes lose their edge. Boxers sometimes lose their edge. I mean, it happens. I think sometimes maybe just age wears you down, or you just become a little wiser. I mean, guys, for example, look at like a Mike Singletary, who in the NFL, I think he was universally feared. But you see him now, he's a really lovely guy, nicest guy in the world. I think age mellows us all.
That's interesting. And I appreciate you comparing me to Mike Singletary, because I think a lot of people at one point were equally as feared. So corporate resolutions. Let's turn this into our market thing. In other words, if you're a company out there, and I'll start this off. As far as I'm concerned, again, if you're a corporation and you need to have a resolution that in 22 we are now going to have an e-commerce presence, you're dead. Or we're suddenly going to invest in logistics and ERP. Or the closest thing that a corporate could do in 22, I guess, is move to the cloud. But as I think about this, I kind of feel like what you should resolve to do in 22, if you're a company, is make sure you avoid obsolescence, because that's really what happens. If you're thinking about a digital strategy or whatnot, I think you're done.
I think that's a great point. I mean, if you're thinking about a digital strategy in 2022, you're about 7 years too late. I think you're spot on with that one. think a lot of people also want to resolve to be, carbon neutral in the next 15 or 20 years. That's out there. But what I think most companies should resolve to do is tell their story better. I think the companies that get rewarded the most are the companies that actually know how to tell their story. There are a lot of great
Like, I mean,
companies
how
out
can
there.
you? So that's
I
interesting.
give you an
Yeah,
example. So
yeah.
I think the company that tells the best story, in my opinion, is the fact that J.P. Morgan and Jamie Dimon are constantly out there telling the story. I don't think J.P. Morgan is that much better a bank than some of these other banks. I just think they tell their story much better than the others do.
Well, so a company that to me doesn't need New Year's resolutions because I think they've done this over the last 3 or 4 years is McDonald's. And again, I think they tell their story too. They let people know we're fun, we're topical. Look, I know you rushed out to buy the J Balvin meal. And then of course when Mariah Carey did her Christmas meal, you put on a red furry coat and walked in there and your dollar menu galore. Look, I do think that the Mariah Carey meal was particularly special for me. What can I tell you?
So I will tell you, in terms of McDonald's telling a story, I have a McDonald's story if you'll just indulge me for a
Yes,
second. It was the late
yeah.
1980s. My friend Tony and I were in the city. We went
Tony.
to see Stevie Ray Vaughan. I forget the venue. It was not a big place. Stevie wasn't really all that well known. And we were walking back and we came across a McDonald's that didn't have a drive-through in the city, obviously, but it had a walk-through. And I walked up to the window, and for some reason, the number 23 was in my head. So I said, I'll have 23 hamburgers and/or cheeseburgers, please. And after a few minutes, I got that bag, and we went back to my then apartment, and we scarfed them down.
Well, let's just say that you weren't putting out a resolution that you personally were going to be carbon neutral in the days to follow. So all right. So is it absurd for Chevron to tell me that they're going to be carbon neutral by 2035? I mean, that's 13 years away. The second largest, maybe the largest oil company, depending on how you measure them, and they're getting close to Exxon's market cap, is no longer going to be doing anything with fossil fuels.
Buys them a lot of time. Listen, is it ridiculous? I think the answer is probably yes. Do they have to do it? The answer is yes. It's like the politicians that come out and say, we will be balanced, our budget will be balanced in the next 10 years, knowing full well there's no shot of that happening. But they do that to assuage the concerns of both their shareholders in the case of Chevron and in terms of their constituents in the terms of politicians.
It's interesting because, Exxon seems to be, it's almost that Chevron is the company that Exxon wants to be. And I find that amazing because you consider that Exxon, by the way, was also referred to as the big unit. So when I say the big unit, who do you think of?
Randy Johnson.
Yeah, right.
And the good thing about Randy Johnson is, he came to the Yankees, much heralded signing, and he did nothing at all. It was just one of those Jeff Weaver type, Eddie Lee Whitson type signings.
But I think the difference between Randy Johnson that the Yankees signed and the Randy Johnson that was in Arizona is when the Yankees signed him, he was a thrower. And then by the time he got to Arizona, he was a pitcher. How am I doing?
Like what you did there.
So a company whose resolution I'm buying is the Ford Motor Company, who's going to have a arsenal that's going to make their revenue base somewhere north of 60% EV by the end of the decade. I think that's realistic. I say go Ford, job number one.
Speaking of Arsenal, we're going to talk about valuable franchises one of these episodes. Talk to us before we get out of here, Tim. Who are we? What are we doing here?
Yes, we are Commercial Break. And as you wander around the airports or wherever you may roam, please check us out every night, somewhere around 6 o'clock or throughout the day. Guy Adami, great to see you. Happy New Year's. No New Year's resolutions, but resolve to watch 6 p.m. every night on
Reach TV, Commercial Break. Later, dude.